What's going on, guys? Got a special one for you today. We are doing a 2-inch body lift on the Humvee, and I've got another video on this you can check out, but it has 40-inch tires on it now, which I'm pretty stoked about. I think it would actually work on the street without much rubbing, maybe a little, but in order to off-road it, which is the entire point in my opinion, you got to get a little more clearance with the body. So I know this is probably going to come up in the comments. There's a few reasons I am doing a body lift over a suspension lift. I'll keep it quick and as succinct as possible, but it doesn't affect the geometry. It doesn't make the truck ride any different. And in my opinion, a Humvee, especially with 40-inch tires, already has more than enough ground clearance to be fine off-road. In fact, the only issues you usually have with ground clearance are on the sides, on the side skirt area, or the rockers, whatever you want to call them. And a body lift will help that area. A suspension lift would as well, but I'm not really worried about getting more ground clearance through the center and with the chassis. In fact, much like a Jeep, I'd rather lift the body up so it's a little bit above the frame, and hopefully, in theory, if I were to belly out the frame on a rock, the body would be a little higher than the frame, and that would serve as a bit of a protective guard from denting that, messing up that soft aluminum body. I'll also run rock rails, but I digress. So I'm doing a 2-inch body lift, and I'm going to show you how to do it. I'll say this too. Check out Split Builds on YouTube. He's got a great video about doing a body lift on the cheap where he uses hockey pucks. Now, I actually found something you can buy online. They're, I guess 3D, or maybe not 3D printed, but CAD laser cut, some kind of special CNC pieces of hard plastic that are actually cheaper than most hockey pucks. Like if you were to buy enough hockey pucks to do a 2-inch body lift, and includes the hood blocks as well. So, but check out his channel. He's way more into this Humvee thing than I am. He does a Duramax swap on a Humvee. He does all kinds of good stuff. And his body lift video is great. In fact, it's where I got my information on doing the body lift for my Humvee. So I'm kind of just copying him, but here you are. So let me show you what I'm working with here. Briefly, I'll just show you the major problem areas. That's probably going to be tight when you're at full lock. That's going to be potentially tight when you're at full lock, and that's what I'm most worried about off-road articulating, because that's fiberglass, so you'll just take a chunk out of your hood. Not ideal. And this is very tight even right now. So this is what I'm talking about. I'll either throw the name up on the screen, put something in the description, whatever. But they're these awesome, perfectly cut pucks. And here's, I think, the hood blocks, but it's exactly 2 inches. And this is stupid cheap. These are the hood blocks here. I don't actually know what these are for, but stupid cheap. Like $100 or something like that, 150, maybe even less. I can't remember. Now, it does not come with bolts. Would have been cool if they had an option to get the bolts with it. I probably would have gone for that, but no big deal. So I'm going to carry these over to the Humvee, and we're going to go ahead and get started. All right, so there's a few preliminary steps you got to do with the 2-inch. That was weird. Sand fell out. With a 2-inch body lift. The first is take this bolt out. The guy at Split Builds mentioned this. This is for your brake reservoir. So go ahead and zap that out, and I will be drilling another hole higher up as he did. And that'll keep you from cracking this plastic thing here, because it's mounted to the body, I guess, somewhere. The other thing is you got to go in. This one I'm looking forward to a little bit less, but you got to go in. It's a little bit dark. but there's that boot where the steering shaft is. Take that off and cut a little bit down here to clearance your steering shaft, because your body's coming up, your steering's gonna stay where it is, and then I think you can just put the boot right back on. So I'm gonna go ahead and knock those two things out. Also, I forgot to mention, you do have to take out these D-rings to get to this, because they block the bolt. You can't see it really because it's dark. It's just a clip you pull out, and then a big nut that you will, well, I'm gonna hit with an impact. It helps to have a big impact on all this stuff, so that's what I'm gonna do. This little pin in there, the kind you gotta bend out of the way and yank out, and it did not want to come out. So anyway, I'm not gonna film myself getting the next one out, because I don't want to fill up my phone with another half hour of footage or whatever. But I'm gonna yank this next one out. Once I got that stupid pin out, it zipped right out with an impact. All right, so got the other side out. I also went ahead and got rid of my little, I think they call it a pinball hitch. I've got an airlift bumper that's gonna go on after I do this body lift. In fact, I was holding off because I've got this rear facing camera right here, and I didn't have enough room for it to clearance the airlift bumper, and it's mounted to the body. Sorry, bad camera angle. But once the body goes up, it should clearance the airlift bumper, which is mounted to the chassis. So anyway, took that off. I don't have a 15/16 wrench. I only had a 15/16 socket. I think you need the 15/16 wrench for the holding the bolt on the top while I crank or holding the nut on the top, I think, while I crank the bolt out with the impact. So I'm gonna go ahead and run to probably Harbor Freight and grab one of those, and probably eat some lunch too, and then we will resume. All right, the 4 rear bolts are removed. The good news I have for you guys is these are super easy. I will say though, basically just go out and buy the Milwaukee corded impact or some kind of massive impact. They are coated with this, this kind of stuff, rust proofing stuff, whatever it is. And if you want to sit there and crank on that with a breaker bar or something, more power to you, but you will save yourself. I mean, hey, if I was trying to get these things off with the breaker bar, it probably would have been, an hour instead of 5 minutes. So literally 5 minutes, zipped all those off. They're all pretty easy to get to. You just need the 15/16 wrench. I recommend the impact, somewhat of an extension, and a 15/16 socket. So, and also good news, the bolts I bought are the same size. They thread on. Still not sure on the length, but that remains to be seen. So I'm going to go ahead and tackle the front ones here, and we'll see how that goes. All right, so I got this one loosened up. Whoa, what did I lay on? That hurt. Got this one loosened up as well. Yes, the whole idea, or the idea of using that works. Please do not try and come from the top. That would be a huge waste of time. So what tools I used this big 15/16 wrench on the bottom. That slides over the nut right in there. And then I ended up going with this smaller socket. Put it on here. I had to do an adapter, the 15/16 socket, and then a swivel joint or a wobble joint, whatever you call it, with the smaller size socket wrench. And that seemed to work out pretty good. It was a bit difficult to turn by hand, but it allowed me to go farther and undo it a little bit quicker. So if you just have a normal socket wrench without the wobble extension or wobble joint, I don't think you can do this just because of how it's in there. You might be able to turn the bolt like a 15th, or a 15th, that's a weird measurement, a 16th at a time, but just use a wobble joint. That'll help you much more. People clown on high lift jacks and say they're for posers and stuff. A lot of people mount them to their Jeeps or whatever. I had one mounted to the front bumper of my previous Humvee. But I tell you what, when you need them, you need them. They're very useful. I'll admit, I've never actually had to use one off-road. In fact, I don't think I've ever had to use a jack off-road on my own vehicle. I think I have on other people's vehicles maybe once or twice, but they come in handy for so many jobs around the house or the property. If you live out in the country, I've used this thing many times. In fact, I've used it on my little tractor a bunch, which I think that's kind of what they're for. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and use this. It's perfect for this job. And I'm going to jack up the back of this Humvee and see if I can get my pucks in there. I got the rear pucks in there, not bolted down yet. All right, guys, so finally got the two front body lift pucks in. I can't even talk. I'll admit, that took some time. It's the same day, but that probably took another 4 hours or something. And it could go a lot faster if I hadn't made some mistakes, so I'm gonna point those out so you guys can kind of learn from my mistakes. So, first things first, I don't even really remember where I left off in the video, so I'll kind of give you a sequence of how I did these. I loosened up all the back bolts. I didn't completely take them out. I guess I did take out the furthest back ones, all the way in the back by the bumper. So I first took out those. I left the two front ones in, but as loose as they could get with the nut only on like 3 or 4 threads. That went really well. Those went right on. Then I took out the sort of mid rear ones, which are like in this area, jacked up the Humvee by the side, I believe. Yeah. Whichever side I was doing, and put the bolt through. That took some finagling to get the puck in, get the bolt in. It wasn't that bad. I would say, 3 out of 10 level of struggle. I got both those in relatively quick. After that, I went to do the fronts. Now that was like a 10 out of 10 struggle for me. I figured I'd start with the passenger side because that's not super hard to get to. And I just struggled and struggled and struggled. What was happening was the body was misaligned with the chassis. And, despite me trying to be careful about that, it still happened. And I just could not get it to line up. I was using a ratchet strap and all this stuff. And I should preface this also. I should have said I loosened up both the front ones. Okay, so I loosened up both the fronts. I took the passenger side out. I was using a ratchet strap. I was jacking up the body. I had the puck in there. I just could not get the body to align with the chassis enough for me to get the bolt all the way through. Eventually, I ended up taking the nut off of the driver's side mount. Therefore, having it no longer under tension. So I wasn't really thinking very straight on that one. Basically, what I was struggling with is I had a 2-inch puck in this one, and this had the bolt, and it was loose, but even though it was loose, it's such a tight tolerance that loosening it didn't really add that much length, if that makes sense. So I was fighting that. So once I took the nut off of that, I left the bolt in just in case, it tried to move even more on me. But once I took the nut off of that, it freed it up. Sorry, I got a phone call. So once I did that, everything was much easier. I still did use a ratchet strap from the body to the frame to kind of pull it over, but it was moving so much better instead of being all bound up and just not working. So I was able to get the bolt through on that side. I was able to painstakingly get the bolt through on this side. I didn't have to adjust anything, luckily. And, you know, really the hardest part after that was just trying to tighten that one. I had to, so it's something else I should point out. These new bolts are 6 inches. You remember I got the 6-inch and the 8-inch because they didn't have 6.5-inch like I thought you would need. For whatever reason, the 6-inch was like about as close as you could get, and if this makes sense, it was touching the chassis. So even tightened all the way up, that mount would have been loose. So I had to layer a few washers to sort of shorten the bolt and get it away from the frame, the bottom of the bolt, get that away from the frame, so then I could put the nut on and it would be actually clamping the body to the body mount rather than just bottomed out on the frame and not doing anything. So yeah, good times. I would say you can get by with the 6-inch bolts like I did. At least yes, they were 6-inch. You can get by with the 6-inch bolts. You do have to just get rid of a few of the washers and get a little creative to make everything work. If you try and run your factory washers and stuff, you might not have enough threads. Or you might. I don't know for sure. It was kind of tight in there. It's tough to see. Another quick thing I just want to call out because I know people are going to ask. And whoa, got really dark. Okay, I'll keep it zoomed in. And I was wondering this too. So it looks like this is all still usable. There's park, there's reverse, there's neutral, and then drive with overdrive, drive without overdrive, second gear, and first gear. So it's a little more bound up, as you can see. It doesn't feel as nice, but it's not bad. And then as far as this, so it's in high lock. Oh, went too far. High, neutral, and then the one that is a bit hard to get to but still doable, I think you got to have this in neutral, is low. If you really yank on it, it feels like it is going into low. So I'll test that out, and if any of them aren't working, I'll throw something up on the screen. But it does appear like all this still works just fine. So that is good to know. They sell stuff for these. It's kind of expensive. Honestly, park to drive is just fine. That's what you're going to be doing 99% of the time. And occasionally, when I'm off-roading, I'll go into low. But it's not like I'm shifting into low every single day. So I think I'm fine with just leaving that how it is. Alright guys, it's a few days later, just got busy, but it's done. I'll pull it there and give you a walk around in a moment. I just want to show you. So I got some good tire comparisons. This is a 40 next to a 30. That was weird. Anyway, my camera shut off. I just want to show you this. This is a 40 next to a 35. So I'll zoom out a touch. Pretty big difference there. It definitely makes the 35 look small. And just for fun, I'll pull up there and show you a 40 next to a 33. Alright, so yeah, real quick, that's a 33 and that's a 40. So that is a massive difference. Don't know what that information helps you with, but anyway, so here's the rig. I've got the 2-inch lift on it, 40-inch tires, obviously. And I'll tell you, this I think is how Humvees are supposed to look. I think I already said that, but this is just, it's a perfect amount of poke, in my opinion. Not too much, not too little. The wheels look incredible. I'll tell you, they look better in person than they do on video, because I've watched videos, they look okay. In person, they look great. Got the airlift bumper on there. That was almost as difficult as putting the lift on there. There's a lot of stuff. Sorry if I sound a little stuffed up. It's in the morning. I got some allergies. But there's a lot of stuff I had to grind on the frame to get this to fit flush. And then I saw, of course, after I had put it on, that somebody sells spacers. So you don't have to do that. I always thought that was just something you had to do with airlift bumpers. I don't know if those spacers are military or they, someone fabricated them just for this purpose. But anyway, in the future, if you're going to get an airlift bumper and you've got an A2 truck like this, just buy the spacers, and that way you don't got to grind your frame shorter. But regardless, whatever. But yeah, the thing just looks incredible. It doesn't look like a monster truck. Since the Humvee already was meant to come with 37s, 40s just look a little bit better. But it doesn't look like when you throw 40s on a Jeep, Wrangler or Cherokee or something, and they just look massive. This looks very fitting. If you put 42s or 43s on it, then it would probably start to look ridiculous. But this just looks really good. I mean, it doesn't even look all that outlandish as far as off-road vehicles go. So I'll show you kind of with the body lift. The main places you're going to notice is you've got a pretty big gap here, which I don't mind that. I actually think that looks kind of cool. In the future, I'm going to put a brush guard on it, so it'll kind of cover that up anyway. Also, I might hit that with some paint just so you don't see the rustiness. But yeah, it'll kind of cover that up anyway. I'll have to probably, I don't know, I might have to modify where the brush guard mounts and just move it up a little bit so it's in line with the headlights and stuff like that. You don't notice anything on the side because, unless you get under here and look at the frame. And then in the back, if you have an airlift bumper, you really notice it. I don't know if I think I showed earlier in the video, of course, without the airlift bumper, and it wasn't that noticeable. With the airlift bumper, it does look a little bit goofy, in my opinion. That's my least favorite part of the truck right now. I think what I'll do, I was going to run a roof rack, and I still am, and just put my tire up there. Eventually, I can't talk. And this isn't, I know there's only 2 bolts there and stuff. I got to buy all the proper hardware and really get this finished up right. But eventually I want to get a Rhino tire carrier, one of those crazy military looking ones with the jack and all that. And I'll put it back here and then cover most of this up with a 40-inch spare, because I have one. The Rhino tire carrier is pretty expensive, but it's one of those things I think won't be for sale forever, and it might be worth buying one now. In fact, there was one for sale, and then someone bought it, which is annoying, but it's how it goes. And then I think I'll also mount a couple pod lights, either probably under the body. Maybe I'll find some long, skinny sort of lights, and that'll kind of take up that gap as well. Pod lights in the back are, they probably could be helpful off-road, but I've camped a few times with guys who have those, and when you pull up to your campsite, and assuming it's getting dark, which if you're into four-wheeling, it usually is, because you wheel till it gets dark a lot of times, you can just flip on a switch, turn on those pod lights, and your whole campsite's illuminated, so that's super nice. I think by far the coolest view is from right here, basically. I mean, just looks so epic. And I'll say too, I have driven it already as well. I drove it to work, and it's awesome. The weird thing is, I thought it was going to be a dog with the 40s, because obviously that changes the gearing a little bit. And I thought I'd have to add a turbo or whatever to make up for it. Weirdly enough, it feels better, which I know that sounds hard to believe. The gearing feels better, where it's not wrapping so much on the highway. I can pretty comfortably cruise at like 75 now, at least 70, and it doesn't sound ridiculous. In fact, you kind of hear the howl of the tires more than anything else, which they're not terrible, but they are pretty loud. That is one small complaint. But anyway, the RPMs, I don't have a tack in it, but the RPMs don't sound nearly as high as they used to. And but it also feels like it has more torque. And the only reason I can think that is those tires are, that wheel and tire combo is significantly lighter than the stock wheel and tire combo. You know, those are aluminum wheels, they're radial tires, and for whatever reason, I haven't weighed them, but I would be willing to guess they're a good 50 pounds lighter each than the stock wheel and tire combo. I'll have to weigh them and confirm that in maybe another video. But if that's the case, you know, that's another 100 pounds of rotating mass. If you can only imagine a, you know, 100 pound weight strapped to your drive shaft, it makes a pretty big difference. So anyway, that's all I really got to show you guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you're into this kind of stuff, I hope you can like and subscribe and perhaps share the video. But that's what it looks like when you've got 40-inch tires on a Humvee and a 2-inch body lift. So thanks guys, I'll see you in the next one.